Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Wednesday afternoon C3 Foundation live stream. We are live again today, so no, I don't think we're not doing a single rewatch this month. So everything you see this month is going to be live. And with us today, we have Claudia Christian is back, and we have Barbara, who is one of our moderators over on the Options Save Lives Forum, one of our longtime moderators. And Barbara is going to be sharing a bit about her story, which is, as of tomorrow, 5 years in the making. Congratulations, Barbara. So, Barbara, I'm going to let you give a little bit about your background and into your story. And for everybody listening, feel free to ask questions, chit chat amongst yourselves. Personally, I love seeing the chat continue. I love having to actually have to slow down the chat. So make me work, guys. So Barbara,
Hello.
I'll go ahead and pass it to you and let you take it from here.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Yeah, tomorrow will be my fifth anniversary of what I consider my most important breakup ever. Um, and I am, I reached out to like Jenny and Claudia and said, "Oh, you've got this TV. Is it okay if I read my story?" Basically a storyteller, though I do improv and sing and blah blah blah, all that stuff. But I like this is the first story I ever told in public, and it's important to me to share. And when I did tell the story, so many people came up to me afterwards, and besides congratulating me on that, they say, "How come we've never heard of this?" And I got my theories about that. And then, oh, I know somebody. It's always, yeah, and it's like, and they're not covering for themselves. They actually, it's like, yeah, my brother-in-law is like, wow, he's destroying his marriage to my sister, and um, he has a real hard time with it. So yeah, so many people approach, and it's like, wow, this is something new, and we've never heard of it, and I'm just so happy to spread the word. I'm kind of helping in the relay what Claudia kind of really started. So I feel like I'm kind of one of the relay people with the baton to help spread the word and give encouragement to people who want their lives to be so much better, and alcohol gets in the way. So
That's so true. And thank you for sharing your story briefly. So 5 years tomorrow.
mm-hmm.
And do you want to tell everybody how this came about, how you found it, what was your beginning like? Take us on
um
a journey, if you don't mind.
no, not at all. I I can tell the whole story that I do tell in public. It's about 8 minutes long. If
Yeah,
that
Sure,
we'd love.
start there.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
I would love you to read your story. It's just,
Okay. All
and
right.
that would be amazing. So yes,
Okay, I will do that.
consider this a half TED talk, a mini
Yeah,
performance.
and I love your TED Talk, by the way. I've turned people onto it. So
Wonderful.
anyway, I titled this story "Better Living Through Chemistry." So, um, and all of us who grew up who are of a certain age remember that was I don't know, Monsanto, somebody's uh, ad ad phrase, "Better Living Through Chemistry." So it applies. Okay. Well, 5 years ago, I did something I thought I would never be able to do. I broke up with an abusive and controlling long term lover. This relationship defined who I was, it determined where I went and with whom I spent my time. In the beginning, this relationship felt very freeing, and I was witty and spontaneous and fun. But towards the end, it left me feeling mostly anxious, sad, and miserable. This intense relationship I've just described was with alcohol. And for many years, my time was wasted drinking, recovering from drinking, and obsessing about drinking. What a lot of people without an addiction may find incomprehensible is just how much alcohol, or fill in the blank addiction, becomes our primary attachment, dominating our lives with everything and everyone else we love coming in a distant second if they're lucky. And when given a choice between them and drinking, they usually lose. We come to crave it like a lover because alcohol, like being in love and dark chocolate, among other things, triggers a cascade of endorphins, the brain's natural opioids, causing a rush of euphoria. And chasing after this feeling becomes our single-minded preoccupation, claiming most of our time, attention, and eventually our souls. Our lives become tethered to access to alcohol. Another misunderstood aspect of being addicted is that most of us hide it very well, in part because nobody really wants to see it or deal with it. It makes them uncomfortable. So if the drunken behavior doesn't affect them, they ignore it. And though I got buzzed or drunk almost every night of my life, I was high functioning in my daily life. Luckily, I never had a DUI, but it wasn't for lack of trying. I never drank at work. I never missed a day due to being hungover. I worked through it as proof that I wasn't addicted, because if I didn't, then I would have to admit I had a problem. So instead, I overcompensated. I did penance, as it were, by being so agreeable, so ingratiating, and I became a pro at pretending that I remembered what I'd said or done while blacked out. I lived in constant anxiety that my excessive drinking would be called out and I would be abandoned by my family and friends if I didn't quit. The very idea of quitting drinking is unimaginable to someone who is addicted. It's difficult to describe how hard my heart clenched at the thought that never being able to take another drink. I used to feel so ashamed and wondered, what's wrong with me? Why can't I control my drinking? I've since learned booze and I were able to form this tight bond because the propensity for addiction is a genetic hand-me-down. And in my case, it comes from both sides of my family, with my maternal grandmother and her father, and my father being the two who are the most profoundly lost to alcohol. My prodigal grandma's nonstop drinking and irresponsible behavior that came with it was the main reason my grandfather divorced her and got custody of my mother and aunt. She died at 61 from a heart attack, no doubt caused in part by years of heavy drinking. My father, a real Jekyll and Hyde drunk, he went from being a smart, affable, and charming man when sober, or so I'm told. I never met that man, to crazy and abusive when drunk. He remained faithful to his liquid lover to the end, and it was the main cause of his uncontrolled diabetes, which killed him at the age of 69. So the bricking of my road to alcohol abuse was laid down by my genes. But learning alcohol would help me escape or numb life's pains and unpleasantness is what so beguiled me into thinking it was my best friend. The first time I got drunk, I was only 13. It was after a humiliating encounter with a popular girl in gym class. Well, at 13, I didn't have a high degree of emotional intelligence and was often awkward in my attempts to make friends. Well, that day, I playfully bounced a basketball off the back of her head in gym class, thinking this was a cool way to get her attention. And I was so wrong. She turned and yelled at me in front of the whole class, "Barbara, you're such a jerk, and nobody here likes you at all." Crushed by the embarrassment, I ran weeping into the locker room and wouldn't come out for the rest of the period. I just wanted to disappear. And later that day, I found alcohol would let me do just that. After school, I and a friend went back to my house and got S-faced and sick on my mother's bottle of Mogan David Concord grape wine. But it numbed me to the awful pain and shame I felt. And that was the start of using alcohol to escape, though it took years for my drinking to escalate from being part of my life to its daily focus. Then the day after my St. Patrick's Day party in 2015, where I drank until I blacked out in the evening, I awoke with a horrible hangover, looked in the mirror and saw a tired, sad woman who had a story to tell, but she just couldn't remember it. And something sane within me finally had had enough of feeling like S and ashamed, being in a hazy state of chronic misery, and I knew I had to find a way to break the spell alcohol had cast over me. I never considered 12-step programs and their abstinence-only mind step for many reasons. but mostly because I didn't want to quit drinking and I didn't believe it was possible. I just wanted to be a normal woman who has a few drinks a few nights of the week, not a few bottles of wine every night of the week. Over the next year, I searched online for a cure for alcoholism and found C3 Foundation's website, which is dedicated to the science-based Sinclair method that would finally break the enchantment alcohol had over me. It's based on solid psychological learning theory principle, and the method made sense to me because that's what I studied in school. It's a better living through chemistry miracle where one little pill, the opioid receptor blocker called naltrexone, lets me no longer be held in alcohol's thrall. I take a 50 milligram naltrexone pill an hour before I'm going to have a drink, giving it time to bind to and protect my brain's endorphin receptors. So when the endorphins flow after taking a drink, my brain doesn't get the expected kick, and the equation of booze equals woohoo no longer computes. It becomes a null one. Over a short time, the brain unlearns its connections and cravings cease. On April 8th, 2016, I took my first pill, and it was the beginning of the end of alcohol's abusive control over me. The shift was abrupt, as if a compulsive drinking switch was thrown into the off position, though it would take me 5 more months to reach pharmacological extinction. I was blissfully astonished that night to find I was able to sip on one drink during dinner and didn't crave another. I enjoyed conversing with my friends without being distracted by anxiously looking to flag the waiter down to bring me another drink. For the first time in my life, I had a drink. It didn't have me. And since that night, the lover I couldn't get enough of is now permanently friend zoned. Now and then I reflect on the many ways my life in the past 5 years is so much richer and happier than before TSM. And I wonder, how did I believe I couldn't live without it? And then it's kind of funny and I laugh because that's the same question I asked, like, what did I see in him after I've fallen out of love with someone?
So there are so many compliments in the Twitch stream right now. You know, Belinky Boy says, I am loving this story, so well told. Aveen says that you are an amazing storyteller. And Rama says, I've loved Barbara's story, having come across it before. Bruce says it's an incredible story, beautifully told. And Pascal says, thanks for sharing, Barbara. I'm sorry that you had to go through that. You're an exceptional writer. And that amplified empathizing with your experience. Thank F for chemistry and its champions.
Yeah, I didn't ask beforehand if it was okay to, because
we're adults. We can do it. Honestly, I usually go for authenticity.
Guy who said thank F, it's like, so
don't worry about language. There are two things, and I did read your story prior to this, but listening to it, of course, is always special, and you pick up more things. Can I dive into a question?
Yes. And by the way, thank you everybody for your kind words. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, type them in and Jenny will relay them. But I'm gonna dive in because this is a subject that is rather dear to my heart. You had a father who tremendously impacted your childhood and created trauma based around his alcoholism, which creates a tremendous amount of pain and anger and also mirroring. And as your background is in therapy, I want to get your take on this. I have a lot of clients who were directly involved with a parent. So this is not a grandparent that is occasionally there or an aunt who's occasionally getting drunk around them. This is a parent. And despite them strongly knowing in their heart that they have a strong chance of emulating this behavior, and despite them wanting to be exactly the opposite of that parent, a lot of them do fall into alcoholism and in some way almost come to the realization that they are trying to live the same experience their parent did so that they can understand what happened as a child. And so they can come to the conclusion that my father was not choosing alcohol over me. I now know what it's like. And do you believe that there's any healing for you personally in having gone through addiction and understood the compulsive nature of alcohol use disorder and the lack of a choice? Did that help you heal at all in understanding your father's predicament?
Yes. Short version, yes. Okay, the relationship with my father, in the longer version of my story, I kind of explain that my earliest memory is I'm about 3.5 on my mother's lap while my father is drunk and raging, and he slaps my mother, and she and I are both crying, and my brother's trying to disappear himself into a corner of the room. He's scared. And my mother left him after that. And I did have visitation with him, but almost every visitation, he scared the hell out of me, because it was like he'd be drunk and going 80 miles an hour down busy Central Avenue in Chicago. Or he had a gun that he wanted us to, kids, like 6, 7-year-old kids, he wanted us to hold the gun and shoot at a target in his garage. I mean, just insane things. And he was a frightening figure to me. And like people say, well, have you ever forgiven him? And the thing is, I don't feel I need to forgive him. He had about as much control over his drinking as I did before I discovered naltrexone and TSM. It's like, I don't really think I have anything to forgive him for. He couldn't help who he was, and so yes, that's the long version of it, is that I just feel so sad that it wasn't there for him. I don't know if he would ever done it, but he died, before anything like that, I think, came around. But yes.
Yeah, so that's an interesting, it's a beautiful take on it, because there is so much anger from the children of alcoholics, so much anger, and anyone who hasn't experienced a compulsive disorder or addiction on their own can't understand why a parent would choose to drink over being with them or doing something normal with them, as opposed to passing out or being violent. They just don't understand. So the fact that you walked that same path in some way creates a modicum of understanding and healing for you, which I think is in a way healthier than children of alcoholics who've never experienced it. And I know that sounds horrible, that I don't wish it on anybody, but in some way it's a positive way to look at it, that anger is dissipated because people, in your heart that you've made people feel maybe dangerous or out of control or scared or something. So how can you judge?
And 4 out of his 5 children, he went on after the divorce to marry and have 3 more children. 4 out of his 5 children had alcohol issues. Only 1 did not.
Wow.
So, and I've since learned something about the OPMR1 gene on chromosome 6. Yes. And I think and I have 2 Gs, which I'm not going to get into all that. People, what? She's talking about 2 Gs. It is definitely in my genes. Yes. It is really in my genes.
And you drank at 13 before your brain was fully developed. So there goes your chances of developing AUD way up. So.
Right. Yeah. Like I say, that I remember that episode. Like I say, and it kind of that's because I guess there's a theory that even if you have the propensity to drink, if you never drink, you're never gonna know.
Of course.
So but starting at 13, because then it was like, oh yeah, let him have a glass of Mogan David with Easter dinner or something like that. They felt that they had my parents, my mom's attitude was like, well, before you go away to college and stuff, you better get yourself accustomed, because of course they had, the frat boys are going to try to get you drunk and blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, that was kind of the attitude for a long time. It's like, let's, now it's like, no, you don't want your children to drink at all.
You didn't know any better. In the 1970s, my family was the same. We'd rather have you drink at home. So all my brothers were allowed to drink beer with their friends at home. They were teenagers. And of course, one became an addict. I became an addict. One dodged the bullet, but the same thing. And this is a European house. We'll water down the wine. Well, now we know that maybe wait till they're in their early 20s and explain to them that their brain is not fully developed and they have a higher chance of developing this. And so live and learn. But I'm sure you'll pass down that information to the younger generation in your family.
So we do have a question. Belenky Boy says, I'm curious if Barbara doesn't mind sharing why she didn't want to try any traditional recovery, and how has that been navigating in a world where most people with AUD are doing it old school?
First of all, as the research shows, and it's been brought out in, Dr. Escapa's book and all the stuff we read, AA, and I'm going to call all 12-step programs are pretty much AA based. They don't really follow people, but it seems like they estimate that maybe only 5% of people are helped with it. And I really believe in stuff that works. I don't like the whole cult-like mentality that I kind of felt. And I knew so many people who went through AA, and even if they were sober, they were still, I didn't see them growing and changing and their lives getting better. It's like they went from being tethered to alcohol, tethered to meetings. And then they'd throw slogans at you. Like I say, it was just too cult-like. There was too much of a tent revival flavor to it, which just is not very appealing to me. And it didn't seem like it was really helping anybody that I knew. I think out of the people I knew who went to it, I can count maybe on one hand and still have fingers left over, people who I felt really did move on with their lives through it. So that answers the question.
I think that's a really key component of, we were talking before we started this stream about people moving on. And I've told Jenny all the time, it's so weird to have these coaching clients come to me and then they disappear. And they don't disappear because I'm not engaging with them or we're not having great sessions. They disappear because they're better and they've moved on in their life. So you work with somebody for 6 months and suddenly they're like, Claudia, I love chatting with you and this has been really helpful, but I'm done. I've reached extinction. I don't know what else to say. I will continue to keep a drink log, but job's a good one. And this feels great.
Right. There's one other component too that really turned me off, and I should have mentioned this first. It's this mindset that you are flawed, that you are morally flawed, and that you will always, you are helpless against alcohol. And that just goes against my grain. It's like, no, I am not a helpless person. And even though I struggle with the alcohol, I did finally find a way to get off of it. But this whole idea that this self-abnegation, I don't think that helps anybody. It's like, telling somebody that I don't know, it's almost like telling them like, well, you're worthless without us. You need these meetings. And I don't know.
There are a certain subset of individuals who enjoy being called powerless and helpless. And because then they can surrender to that help that is sort of above them. But I think if you're a strong-minded, strong-willed individual, it's very hard, and especially a woman, to be told you're powerless.
Yes.
No, I'm not. Immediately we say, no, I'm not. Watch this.
Well, especially when so many women will turn to alcohol because it's something that they can control. So if you're drinking because it's something that you have the choice over, at least in the beginning. In the beginning, if you got the bad genes and the bad luck, it doesn't stay that way. But in the beginning, it's something that you have control over. Mm-hmm. And those people who drink because they're trying to get rid of shameful events or feel less anxious and more socially adept, and those all come from a feeling of being powerless to begin with. So saying that you're powerless over anything else is then, it's not liberating. It might be meant to be liberating, but it compounds part of the core reasons why you turn to alcohol in the first place.
Plus, for women, it's fed to us as something that is liberating and sexy, and it makes you more sociable. And I mean, it's this whole, it's like collecting wines. When I collected wines in the 90s, it was like, you're a sophisticated woman, you have a wine cellar. I mean, all of that stuff is fed to us through advertisement and wine companies and all media. And you look at Sex in the City or The Sopranos, everybody's drinking, and it's like, okay, and for a while you do feel like you're the life of the party, and it's fun and it's sociable and you're laughing, and then you're not. So they don't put that bit in most of the television shows and movies. They don't put the bit in where suddenly you're the one obsessing where the next drink is, and you're not listening to your fun friends.
For sure. Yeah. Like I said, when you said that before we started, I said, oh, that guy plagiarized my story.
Yeah. Barbara and I were talking about the phenomenon of being in the beginning of TSM and realizing for the first time when you're out with your friends that you're focused on your friends and not when you're going to order your second or third drink. Yeah. Hey, hello. Or am I drinking too quick? Why isn't or is there enough wine in the bottle? There's 3 of us. Oh my God, it's not going to be enough. Should we order another bottle? All this is going on in your head while your dear friends are telling these compelling stories, and you're not listening because all you're thinking about is booze, 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 booze. Next drink, next drink. Yeah.
And that to me was the most, actually, I just was communicating with somebody on OSL last week, and they mentioned that they feel free from that obsession. I said, that to me was the worst. The idea that I was so, the obsessing about the drinking was probably one of, other than the physical effects, was one of the worst things about it, that something had control of me like that. I hated that obsession and that craving.
Yeah, you're not present. It's difficult when your mind is always like it's like somebody knocking on the door constantly, just knocking on the door constantly. You're trying to focus on something, and it's like, is it too early to drink? What time is it? Shut up. You just want to say, shut up. I'm trying to work, and it's really annoying. And when that voice quiets, when that idiot in your brain quiets down, you start to listen to yourself, and you start to hear yourself, and you start to really be present for other people as well.
Can I ask you a question? Because this is the other thing that I noticed. And again, it's in part of my longer story. The thing that I found miraculous and like a blessing was that all that shame that I felt for so long literally evaporated, because I stopped driving drunk and I stopped blacking out, and I was so amazed that it's not like you needed long-term therapy. It's like, oh, I stopped doing these things that I felt ashamed about. And literally it was like, did it feel like that? You're like, wow, I'm no longer doing these really stupid, dangerous things.
Well, there are still some dangerous and uncomfortable things that I remember very clearly. But when you come to the realization that everything bad that happened in your life was alcohol related. And for me, literally everything bad in my life that occurred had alcohol in the picture, whether that was somebody dying or somebody in an accident or just a really horrible incident of violence or whatever, always, or guilt or shame, always alcohol was involved. So or bad relationships, being attracted to the wrong people, putting you in dangerous situations, everything had to do with. So once you distill it and you realize, oh, the theme there was booze, and so you take booze out of the picture, and suddenly, yes, you don't get yourself in those situations anymore. You are the logical one, the reliable one, the one who can get other people out of that situation, the one with the clear head, the one that can remember, the one that's helpful, the one that shows up. And that's the difference, is so suddenly you feel proud of yourself because you're doing things that other people can't do. I mean, I remember, I hate saying throwing, that sounds like throwing a birthday party. I organized a funeral for a friend, and I realized I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was drinking, because I would have been caught up in the whole in the whole drama of the thing and the emotions, and I wouldn't have been clear-headed or level-headed at all. And I was very pragmatic about it. I was able to approach it, and I was able to then go home alone and grieve on my own for the person I lost. But the rest of the time, I was in productive mode, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was drinking. I'd be drinking while I was organizing it. I'd be drinking when I got home. I'd be drinking, hungover the next morning when I was trying to deal with her and help her. And I wouldn't have been the same friend. So yes, there are less moments of shame because you're doing less shameful things.
Yeah, it just felt I was just amazed because I thought it would be something that I would have to really work through, but it's like, I just stopped doing those things that made me feel ashamed. I'm not shaming myself anymore. So
yeah, it leads to forgiveness.
So Barbara, you sound like you were a what we would call a rapid responder, hitting extinction within 5 months. Can you talk a little bit about the ups and downs and what your progress was over the 5 years and where you're at today and what your relationship with alcohol is now?
Okay, sure. And I don't have my old drink log with me. Drink log is so important to keep, especially at the beginning. Now what I do is I journal daily, and I mark down when it's an AF day, and then alcohol-free day for people who don't know the lingo. And then if it's like my friend comes over for dinner, I have 2 glasses of wine, I'll put 2 drinks or whatever. So I just saw a gradual decrease, and then it just kind of went further down. And again, I can't say I was, because I would drink at home alone, so I can't say I was just a social drinker, but I just found that I was drinking less and less. And actually now I basically have between 5 and 6 AF days a week. And I mostly have 1 to the very most like 2.5 or 3 drinks per, and that's about it. I don't think about alcohol. I don't, obsess about it. I don't crave it. Like in Claudia's TED talk about the billboard. I mean, I've always loved that story. It's like, it was just a billboard. I felt the same thing when I could watch TV, and when before TSM, when people on TV were drinking, I'm going to go, it's like, I'm going to join them, And now it's like, I don't even notice when, it doesn't, like you say, it was just a billboard. It's like, yeah, it's just people drinking on TV. I don't even pay attention to it. It does not stimulate me to want to drink at all. But I was a rapid responder, and I feel very, very fortunate and lucky that I was. When I'm moderating, I try to listen to I do listen to people who are taking longer, and all I can do is support them. I don't have that experience. We do have a lot of good people on OSL who it took maybe 18 months or whatever, and when they weigh in, I think it means more than all I can say is, hey, just hang in there. You're doing significant harm reduction. Even if you don't feel like it's this big drop off, look at your graph. It's a downward, you're down 33%. So I try to reinforce it, because everybody wants to not be where they're at,
True.
It's like, I want to be there. I want to be at the finish line of the marathon. It's like, yeah, journey of 1,000 steps, etc. So I do encourage people just to be compliant and have faith and try the different things that we do, the mindful drinking, the setting the drink down or putting it in another room, distracting yourself with other things. I mean,
and how many of those did you employ in those 5 months to get you to extinction?
All of them. putting the drink down was a really big one for me, not having that glass in my hand all the time. And it's kind of weird. I look at pictures like before TSM, and it's like I always had a glass in my hand. I always had a wine glass or a beer mug or something in my hand. But putting that down is very important. And mindfully drinking, and the way I interpret that is that if you really pay attention how alcohol is not affecting you anymore the way it did before TSM, also really reinforces this is working for me. I take a sip and a lot of people say how much alcohol tastes different on TSM. Excuse me. And my theory, and it's just a theory, is that since the brain is learning that it's no longer getting its kick from alcohol, I think that the anticipation of a goodie makes it taste better. But when the goodie is no longer a goodie, it just kind of, like my sister-in-law, who's not a drinker, I used to say, oh, red wine tastes moldy. And I say, oh, you nuts? Well, now I kind of see what she's tasting. There is that. I mean, now I understand. It's no longer just yummy, yummy, delicious. It's like I can taste what she's talking about. Mindful drinking and keeping the drink log again. And I don't know if other people, I'm like an overachiever. So, and I'm always stressing to people, I know you don't want to be where you're at, but set your goals for where you're at. Because just like New Year's resolutions, I'm going to lose 50 pounds or whatever. By the end of January, the gym membership, they don't go there anymore or whatever. It's the same. It's like, you got to start from where you're at and make it always that you have a success. Because with my drink chart, I would put down Monday through Friday, the whole week. And then there would be how many drinks total, how many AF days total, and then what my goals were. Well, I always kept my goals attainable because then you always feel like a success. And so after I was doing a consistent 1 AF day a week, I kept it, I put down 1 AF day, and then I beat it by doing 2. And so once I was consistently doing 2 AF days, I raised my goal to 2 and started doing 3. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one with this kind of psychology. It's like, yeah, I'm going to beat.
You were gamifying your journey, and that's amazing because you're shooting off endorphins. It's like gambling. So every time it's 2 days and you could write down 2 days, you're reinforcing that, and the dopamine's flooding your brain because it's a feel-good thing. That's a wonderful way to do it.
And for anybody who's listening, for anyone who's listening, one of the things that we see a lot, both on our social media and in our chats, we'll see people who have successes and they're almost pre-wired to discount your own success. And so we see people say, it's not really that big of a deal. And I know it's not that big, but I had an alcohol-free night last night. But, it's only one. And it's like, no, celebrate. How important, because Barbara, you have that background in psychology. Talk a little bit about how important it is not only to set yourself up for success, but to celebrate even those small victories, because those small victories are nowhere near as small as you think they are.
Exactly. And to me, to have an AF day, my first AF day, it was like, considering I drank pretty much every day unless I was like dead sick or whatever, it was amazing. And it's like, yeah, you have to celebrate. You have to set yourself up for success. And, I've taken Claudia's 3 C's, which are obviously her initials, monogram, whatever, obviously compliance, commitment, and compassion.
We might steal that.
Passion. Because we were talking about, it's those, when you feel guilty and ashamed, you want to do this more. You've got to have compassion for yourself, and you've got to cut yourself some slack. when you backslide, like I had times I backslid and I went, okay, but you know what? I'm committed to this. That's where the commitment comes in. I'm committed to this. I do tell a story about when I quit smoking. I used to be a pack and a half a day smoker. And one of my jokes is I was in a three-way with alcohol and cigarettes for years, but they were my two boyfriends, I guess. And when I finally quit, I had been like 3 months and I went to a party and I smoked a cigarette. And I woke up the next day and immediately my mind started going like, oh, look at what you did. You blew it. And I don't know, again, something sane inside of me, something wise kind of said, look, this is a hard habit to kick. Cut yourself some slack. And I never had another cigarette again. And it's like, that was like a new experience for me to actually be in my own corner. It's so important. You've got to be in your own corner. And that's what,
you could look at that two ways. You could either say, oh, I relapsed and had a cigarette, or you could say, I just had one cigarette in 3 months.
Yeah. And I said, you know what? And I had to stop and think, do I want to continue to be a non-smoker? And I said, yes. So, and then I moved on from there and I've never had another cigarette. And that was 30 years ago. So
how many years ago?
30 years ago.
Oh
a couple.
Long time ago.
Fantastic. That is a tough habit to kick, man.
Oh. I think that it was harder, I think. I mean, because there wasn't a pill for it, then.
I've heard from people that say if they've been clean from cigarettes for like 10 years and they say if they had one cigarette, they would be back to 2 packs a day. Yeah. Whereas for people who've been off alcohol for a while, I know that if somebody sat here and forced me to drink a glass of wine right now, I wouldn't go back to drinking. It wouldn't have that same effect. But with cigarettes, it's something, and it's like that primeval thing in the brain that really, really hooks you.
Oh, it really does. So, but yeah, it's like, so be in your own corner, set your goals, make them reasonable. And at the beginning, I didn't even set goals. At the beginning, you're doing baseline. You do like, okay, I remember I had this before I started. The last week for TSM, I kind of estimated how much I had, a lot. And then just went week by week and paid attention to the downward trend. And then when I noticed that, I said, I'm ready for an AF day. But it wasn't like right at the beginning. I mean, even though I was an early responder, it wasn't like, oh yeah, the first week I was like, boom. But yeah, and it's just kind of work your way down. I mean, it's the whole principle behind mini habits. Everybody's heard of that, the mini habit thing. And it does work. People say, oh, you got to be kidding me, doing one push-up. But you know what? If you do that every day while your coffee's being made, soon it turns into 10 push-ups or whatever, And I think it's the same with following TSM, is that start wherever you're at and just feel so good that you have found something that's going to help you, that you went out and you discovered this method. I had one guy come up to me after my story and he goes, wow, you're so smart to have figured this out. It's like, well, we have the Google. I mean, I didn't invent this technique. I didn't make it a dog, but it's like.
You, Barbara, in your 5 years, did you ever have any intense challenges like traveling or maybe drinking during the day and feeling it wearing off at night? Or did you have anything unusual? Most people have, it's not all linear. Did you have any experience in your 5 years where you went, ooh, I've got to keep an eye on that, or anything? Yeah. Can you share those?
Yeah, I can. They were like what I call vestigial feelings. Mm-hmm. Okay. One thing, I'm a skier, and like ski trips are basically also booze-a-thons. I mean, ski clubs are, woo, let's party. I had to be I know when I'm going on a ski trip, see, that's it. I don't say to myself, I'm going on a ski trip and I'm not going to drink at all. I know I'm going to drink. I'm with my friends. But yeah, it was challenging that, no, I'm not going to keep up with them because it's really a temptation. And then there were just some times where I would feel like this vestigial, and I don't know if it was like just ancient memories in my brain saying, well, this used to make me feel really good. But I would just feel the need to, but I always would take a pill, and then have a drink. Because I think it's important, because if you're feeling that craving or that urge, just take the pill. Sometimes I've then forgot to have a drink, but usually I'd have a drink. And I can't really say if it was any particular thing that happened at the time, but it just seemed like these vestigial urges to, yeah, sit and watch TV and have a drink, or, sit and read my book and have a drink. I used to enjoy doing that all the time. Sit outside by my little chimney and have a drink. So there are little situations that can still sort of trigger me to want to have a drink. And if that happens, I cut myself some slack and I have a pill and I have a drink. So
yeah, it's a big difference between doing something that you enjoy, sitting outside with a glass of wine, and drinking 3 bottles of wine because you're just because you have to maintain. That's a huge difference. So you made a choice, but you were responsible about it. You take a pill and you wait an hour and you have your glass of wine outside.
right.
It's not like you have the goal of complete abstinence, so there's nothing wrong with that.
No, that was never my goal. So yeah, but there are just times I do feel these like vestigial urgings, but they don't really frighten me because I know I've got the pills and then I can be protected. And sometimes it does make me stop and think, like, what's going on here? Is it just biochemistry coming around, or is something happening in my life right now that is making me, want to reach out and drink? So yeah, there are times I have to kind of sit and figure out if it's one or the other.
That's a really good thing to self-reflect upon, and also the issue of that id, that lizard or whatever we say in the brain, may be waking up a little bit and trying to get your attention again. And that's what I always warn people in year 4, 5, 6, whenever, that it might just say to you, you don't need the pill, you're fine. And believe me, it will happen. So you have to always check in with yourself and say, do I genuinely it's a beautiful spring day, is it just that I genuinely want a glass of wine, or am I self-medicating because somebody pissed me off earlier?
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to check in with yourself. And if you decide, no, this is a healthy drinking experience, I just want to sit outside with a girlfriend and have a glass of wine with her, even though it's a Wednesday, and I'm allowing myself to do that. And that's fine. But that little bit of mindfulness of just asking yourself, checking in with yourself, which luckily you have so much of a background of psychology that it makes you hyper aware of those.
Yeah, it does. I'm probably more aware than because of my background, and this is what I studied. So, but yeah, I mean, I went through, like everybody does, there was the honeymoon period and then there was a spike after it. But because I was made aware that this is a common thing, and it's always really scary. I notice people on OSL will be like, oh my God, look at my chart. Like for the first 3 weeks, look, I went down, and like, look at this week. It's like, it's okay.
Yeah. Your brain's gotten used to the naltrexone. And now what's happening is the other things kicking in to say, oh, I'm missing the same effect, so let's drink more to get that effect.
Well, and then there's the motivation factor at the beginning, too, because so many people have to struggle so much just to get their hands on a prescription that by the time they get that, they've gone through the whole process of just being able to start the Sinclair method. It's like New Year's Day with the new resolution. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to kick my AUD to the curb. I've got this. I've got the power of naltrexone and the Sinclair method. And so there's all of that motivation as well that is at an unsustainable level.
Yeah.
That you have to learn how to work through when that high level of motivation starts going down to a normal level of motivation and being able to work through that.
The other thing I've kind of noticed being a moderator, again, I'm fortunate that I don't have any so-called comorbidities. I don't have a depression, or I don't bipolar or anything like that. I'm ADHD, but it's a difference, not a disease. and there are people who do struggle with other issues in their life besides just alcohol. And they probably were using alcohol to kind of deal with the depression or the bipolar or whatever like that. So, again, you just have to be where you're at, be present, like what Claudia was saying, and start where you're at, be in your corner, be compliant, communicate with other people. I have to say one thing, the OSL forum has the most intelligent, creative, articulate people. I mean, by and large, and nobody is ever rude or anything like that. Everybody is there for each other. It's just it's a wonderful forum.
It's certainly been amazing, and I've been so grateful for your contribution along with our other moderators. What an amazing group. And when things come up, then they're handled, and it is, you guys have helped really cultivate a community. So it's not just a bulletin board of information. It's where people can actually share and talk with each other, and really just bond and help each other. So we appreciate your contribution in that. So as we are closing in on the 5:00 hour in about 10 minutes, Barbara, what has your success on the Sinclair method given you back that maybe alcohol had taken from you, or that alcohol had prevented you from even doing to begin with?
Other than my life, again, in a longer version of my story, I knew I reached, like, say, PE when, as I say, all heaven broke loose. It was like, I mean, everything, my libido came back. I mean, because it's no longer being tamped down by alcohol. I just, oh God, it's so hard to, I mean, I got into, I went back to my childhood love of performing. I live in Chicago, so of course, improv and singing and acting, and then storytelling is like really my calling now. I would not have done any of this, because if again, being so tethered to alcohol, having to be, oh, I can't go to that restaurant, they don't serve alcohol. Oh no, at that party, no one's going to be drinking, I can't go there. And it's like, all the things, I felt so trapped in that I was just so linked to when was my next drink going to be. And it's literally opened up avenues that I've explored, and it's just so hard to say, how rich my life is now. And I would not have done any of this, because the thing about when you're drinking and you feel that shame and guilt, you're not going to be going and putting yourself out there and trying things. And because it takes honesty to, and we have a professional actors right here, you need that honesty to, and you can't be honest when you're caught in an addiction. You can't be present and you can't be honest. So it's definitely made me a more present and honest person. So I'm not hiding anymore. I don't have anything to hide, and it's such a relief.
Makes you a better lover, a better friend, a better daughter, a better, mentor, better teacher, it makes you better at a lot of things, because you love yourself and you're present and you're not distracted by that lure of the call of alcohol. And then people can sense it. I always say, you said something in the very beginning, you said, I just wanted to disappear. Mm-hmm. And I tell people, as I'm seeing them in coaching, as they get progressively further into TSM, their sparkle comes back, their personality comes back. It's like when I started with them, they're dead. There's dead eyes and just depressed and self-loathing. And through as the months go on, you see them reappear, because they did disappear. Alcohol stole them from themselves, and now you see them just like this butterfly coming out. They stand a little taller, they speak a little more forceful, they laugh more, their face lights up, and it's like, wow, you're no longer disappeared. You are right here. You're present. You're one, it's a beautiful thing to see.
And physically you're getting better sleep. You're not waking up hungover and feeling like you're you're not, that Bruce Springsteen song about Born in the USA. You spend your life like a dog that's been beat too much, till you spend your life just covering up. And every time I hear that verse, I just think about, that's how I was when I was drinking, spending my life covering up, and I was beating myself, the alcohol was beating me, so.
Well, we are grateful that you are 5 years in your journey and that you're doing better than ever. I love the fact that you go skiing with friends and you don't need to keep up with them, that you're fine. And you probably ski better and feel better the next morning too. And you sleep better that night. So
I do. Yeah. It's like, what? I used to always, even though I knew it wasn't good because it would make me ski a little bit more out of control. I'm an intermediate, guys. I'm not like any hot dog, but I love to ski. But yeah, I used to have a glass of wine at lunch, and then I'd hit the slopes and I'm going like, I'm kind of a little too free here. I'm like taking risks I shouldn't take.
Yeah. Yeah. So
but now it's like I never have a wine or anything like that at lunch when I go skiing. It's all like, no.
Isn't that great? I'm so happy for you, Barbara. And I'm so grateful that you're sharing your story to help others. Thank you.
Well, I'm paying it forward. Thank you for what you've done for us. So.
Well, and we got a comment here from Pascal says, I'm grateful that you've risen, joined this stream, and shared your story, Barbara. You're an incredible human being, and I am thoroughly enchanted. I hope you come back.
Yay! Awesome.
Hey, anytime you invite me, I'll be more than happy to come back.
Thank you.
And I guess just to wrap up, if anybody has any last minute questions, go ahead and make sure you get those in the chat. And I'll be watching those as we give people some time to get those last minute questions in. Barbara, if there was one last thing that you could say, especially for people who are just at the beginning of their TSM journey right now, what would you want them to know above all else?
To practice the 3 C's: compliance, the golden rule, commitment, and compassion. I just want you to be in your own corner more than anything in the world. I say that the naltrexone does the heavy lifting by protecting your brain. You got to do some lifting for yourself, and that's like being in your corner and being aware. Try to be aware. Definitely keep a log. And you're on a journey. You're on an incredible journey. And we're all bozos on this bus. So take your seat. Yeah, thank you, Firesign Theater. Take your seat and know that we're there for you. Go to the OSL board. There are wonderful people there. If you ever have to ask a question or you just want to kvetch, we're there.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to take 2 seconds here and switch over and just grab that link so that I can drop that into our chat for anyone who is not familiar with our Option Save Lives forum. There is our link, and you can stop in, become a member. It's all free. That one of the things that I've always loved about the forum as opposed to Facebook is you have the ability to be as anonymous as you feel like. Whereas with Facebook, for the most part, you've got to use your name. And if you don't, then you're running a risk at any time that somebody might, or that you might get booted for a fake profile. Well, our forum, you can be as upfront with who you are or as anonymous with your screen name as you like. Barbara is one of several of really great moderators that we have over on the forum, so all are welcome. And I will put that link also on the YouTube version of this once it gets uploaded as well. But thank you so much again, Barbara, for being here with us this week. Thank you, Claudia, as well, for joining. Thank you to everybody who's been out there watching today. You guys have been great in the chat, both chatting with us and amongst yourselves. We will be back next week. Claudia and I are going to be talking about the power of hope. So get your questions ready for next week. Get, mark it on your calendar. But we're focusing really hard throughout the entire month on hope and new beginnings, and doing everything we can to help people start well and stay well, and to reach their goals on the Sinclair method. So it looks like there aren't any questions out there. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous to everyone. So it has been wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and mute us and put our end screen on. I'll stay online for any chat-based questions for a few more minutes. And otherwise, everybody have a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.